Welcome to another edition of The Public Interest. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for joining us. Again with me is Brigadier the Honorable David Granger, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Malika.
Right. As you would know by now, the Budget Debates 2013 got underway in the National Assembly on Tuesday, the 2nd of April, and thus far we would have had about 3 days of debates. Now, we spoke with Mr. Granger last week pertaining to his views on the 2013 budget, and as those debates got underway, we're chatting with him again to see if his opinion or his views have changed regarding the 2013 budget. Sir, let's jump right into it. Listening to some of the presentations of the opposition members, a Partnership for National Unity, thus far during the debates, the public is getting the feeling that APNU is still not budging on whether they're going to jump on the bandwagon and support Dr. Ashley Singh and the PPPC government regarding this year's budget.
Well, there's no way we can jump on the bandwagon because that bandwagon is heading for nowhere. We can see as the budget goes on that the gulf between the government side and the opposition side is becoming wider and wider. The government side seems to think it's some sort of political rally. They rant and shout, they quote a lot of statistics, but quite clearly it is the opposition side, and particularly a Partnership for National Unity, which is exposing the emptiness of the budget. For example, I would say, without trying to criticize other presentations, that the strongest presentations came from the regions, because as we always say in the Partnership for National Unity, all politics is local, and when you hear the regional MPs speak, they spoke with passion, they spoke with conviction, because they know what is happening on the ground. It is quite clear that when this budget was designed by Dr. Ashley Singh and the members of the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration, they did not take on board the concerns of the ordinary people in the regions. And it is our regional MPs who are exposing the emptiness and the shallowness of the budget. So I would say that there's no jumping on a bandwagon here, because that budget is really going nowhere. It does not satisfy the needs of the ordinary people of this country. And this time next year, we'll all be looking back to 2013 and saying, the budget, did not bring about the change that we wanted to see in this country.
Sir, you've been accused thus far of yes, you're explaining that there is no proper plan, but you've been accused of thus far not even being willing to compromise or see where it goes, at least during the estimates after the debates, then to decide where you stand. How do you respond to accusations like those?
Well, I can't compromise with an empty budget, We are prepared to sit down and discuss with the government side what changes need to be made. And we have some principles, and we believe that the country can only be developed from the grassroots up. We need to see people being given jobs. We need to see the education system fixed. I think even when you listen to the Minister of Education, she admits that the education sector, has a lot of problems. But we must understand that people are the center of APNU's arguments, APNU's policy, APNU's manifesto. And unless we see that the lives of ordinary people will be changed by this budget, there's nothing to support. We want to see our children getting a first-class education at primary and secondary level. We want to see a drastic cut in dropout rates. We want to see well-equipped schools with good laboratories. We don't want a lot of hype and fast talk about one laptop per family. We want to go into a school at Ramadan, a school at Anna, a school at Aishalton, or St. Ignatius, or Sand Creek, and see functioning laboratories. We want to see scientists coming out of our schools, mathematicians, technicians, and we're not seeing that. And what we are seeing is a lot of children going through the education system, some dropping out, some migrating to other countries, but we are not seeing development. Now, Dr. Singh, the Minister of Finance, boasts about the growth of the economy. It is true, as we said last week, that the economy has grown. There's no doubt about that. Gold is selling at over $1,600 an ounce. Sugar revenues have brought in some wealth. Rice, through the rice deal with Venezuela, has brought in wealth. So we know that there has been a bigger cake, but the people at the bottom of the social ladder are not getting a slice of that cake. There are too many people still mired in poverty, and they are being sidelined, peripheralized, marginalized, discriminated against. They can't participate in the economy. So even though you may boast of growth, it is jobless growth. Even though you may boast of growth, it is not changing the lives of ordinary people at the bottom of the pile. And those are the people you're concerned about.
I'm happy that you did mention the ordinary people at the bottom of the pile, because one of the sentiments that came out during one of the debates coming from PPP MP is that negatives are not coming from the people on the ground regarding the 2013 budget. The negatives are only coming from the opposition. In your experience, sir, what feedback have you been getting from our citizens out there?
Well, the feedback is that there's nothing in the budget for them. That is what they've been saying to us. That's what they've been saying to members of APNU. You know, we asked last year for the old age pension to be increased to $15,000, and the government only increased it to $12,500. What the government has done is something, they try to be very clever. They've obviously read all of our press releases, and they've gone through to see what the themes are, and then they've done a cut and paste job. Oh, they say, APNU declares 2013 year for youth. Click, click, click. Let's put something for youth. APNU is dissatisfied with the level of social protection for pensioners, for old folk. They asked for 15,000. Click, click, click. You know, let's cut and give them 12,500. So they've tried to hijack the debate on social development and national development by giving small amounts on all of the issues that we've spoken about. But those amounts are not enough to bring about a real change in the lives and livelihood of the ordinary people. And they've deliberately done that. So when we say, oh, okay, you all are not treating the old folk well, look, we've got $12,500. Everybody knows you can't do anything with $12,500. But they've tried to preempt APNU. They've tried to hijack the conversation by saying, look, you asked for increased pension, there you have it. You asked for, better salaries for civil servants, there you have 5%. But you know, the civil servants know that year by year, the quality of life is not improving. The life chances, the opportunities for self-advancement for their children are not improving. But the government decided, look, create the illusion of giving the people what they're asking for. Just in case there is some snap election, they can always go to the people and say, we gave you what you asked for. But it's all an illusion. That budget will not change the way people live in this country. They're ordinary people.
This might pull out a response that may seem redundant, but is there anything at all positive in the 2013 budget?
Well, as I said, there are positives, but the positives are too small. It is not a totally negative budget. The positives have come about because of trickery. What I think one of the other speakers called sleight of hand. You know, it's like a trick-hard trick. There is something there, but the movement of the hands and so on. When you actually make a tally, you will discover that there's not much. It's like this annual game of giving the public servants a 5% increase, then discover that inflation is practically equivalent to the price increase. And that is why one of our MPs, Ms. Valda Lawrence, quoted the prices of normal foodstuffs. People are paying $200 a pound for plantain. Plantain used to be one of the cheapest food available. But when you look at where the so-called increases are going, increases in pension, increases in salary, it will all be wiped away on a day-to-day basis because there's no real improvement in the person's lives, and everything that they get as a gift from this government is going to be gobbled up by price increases. You know, increases in fuel costs, increases in transportation, increases in clothing, increases in food. I know of cases in which children are not going to school because they can't afford a minibus fare. Children are not going to school because they had nothing to eat. I've spoken with teachers who put their hands in their pocket to help children to get transportation to go to school. These are the issues APNU is concerned about. And these are the issues the budget ignores.
Now, I want to move away from the human side of it just for a bit. Last year, the opposition, of course, APNU along with AFC, came together and reduced allocations for NCN, and I think it was Gina. Now, throughout that year, you know, the opposition kept complaining that they're not getting fair, they haven't been getting fair coverage. Is the opposition planning to cut to those entities again this year? And what is it that's going to stop NCN and Gina from continuing on to have government monopolize those agencies? Because like I said, you've complained and nothing has been done to correct that situation.
Well, as you know, the question of media coverage for the opposition is a continuing one. Up to this week, I wrote the speaker and I raised the matter in the National Assembly because we've had some very malicious reports from one particular news agency, and specifically from the Government Information Agency. I pointed out that there was really literally no coverage of opposition spokespersons from the time Mr. Granger spoke on Tuesday. What they do is they only cite the words of the government spokesperson, a minister for example, when he rebuts or criticizes a comment on the part of the opposition. That's the only time you find that the Government Information Agency reports on the words of the opposition spokespersons. Now, it is true that NCN has been streaming, has been carrying footage of the budget debate, but that was not my complaint. My complaint is that the written word, the words that people in the hinterland, the people overseas will see, the permanent record is what Gina will publish, and Gina has been very prejudicial. So we did make cuts last year, and we did insist that there should be fairer coverage, but the government, I think, has tried to use some device to get around the legislative obstacle that we put in their way to prevent them from using funds without the permission of the National Assembly. And this will be the subject of a further motion in the National Assembly, because it would mean that the government has breached a specific resolution of the National Assembly and has behaved in an unconstitutional or an unlawful manner. So that will be subject of, we haven't ignored it, we are quite aware of what happened, but we must make it clear, and people must understand that when the National Assembly majority passes a resolution, that resolution must stick. We cannot be ignored.
Sir, aren't you confident that the people of Guyana may by now have been on to NCN and Gina and government and, can decipher what is truth and what is untruth?
Well, this is the problem of communications. If you go into a supermarket and you see only one brand of soap, there's no choice. You take it or leave it. You buy it if you want soap at all. You have to buy what's there. But once you see different types, you can exercise an option. You can choose. And if people only get what Gina is delivering or what NCN is broadcasting, there's no choice. And after a while, they will say, well, this is what we read. I saw it in black and white. There it is, that government press release. So there is a tendency for people to believe eventually what they have been reading. And I think this is the danger of propaganda. That is why we insisted last year, and we insist again this year, that there should be balanced coverage. If Dr. Ashni Singh makes a presentation and Mr. Carl Granger makes a presentation, both presentations should be published. It is true that NCN did publish, the presentations fairly, if I may say so, as a television broadcast, but the written word that people will see for years to come is that Dr. Ashley Singh or Mr. Irfan Ali, criticized Mr. Carl Granger, and there's nothing to show what Mr. Carl Granger had said. So there's no fairness, and that is why we feel that the media houses owned by the state, particularly the Chronicle and the Government News Information Agency, are unethical, they're unprofessional, they do not comply with the normal rules or the normal conventions of journalism as we understand it in the Western Hemisphere. It's a sort of Soviet-style propaganda. So we will continue to work towards ensuring that there's fair coverage and let the people choose. The people cannot choose if only one side is allowed to get a story. And that one side is very prejudicial, and that is why I made a complaint as early as Wednesday.
Okay, are you willing to at this time say if allocations are going to be reduced? Because I know you don't necessarily favor the word cut, but are you at this time willing to say if allocations for those entities or that sector will be reduced?
We have to take any legitimate measure under the Constitution. We have to take any reasonable measure to make sure that the government pays attention to us. And it is impossible for an opposition like us to allow measures to go through, knowing fully well that those measures are harmful to the interests of the majority of the population, which in short means that we're going to block any measure we feel is harmful to the people.
All right. Let's talk about the security sector for a bit. Now, we have had what some are calling the drama regarding Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Clement Rohi. Is the opposition going to take part in the big debates regarding the security sector? Because the minister is still the minister. Are you going to be participating in that part of the debate?
We have already participated. The Shadow Minister for Public Security, Mr. Vincent Felix, has already spoken. And we made it clear that the public security sector, under the management of Mr. Rohi, is not moving forward fast enough, and it's not moving in a direction which can guarantee us what we call human safety, look after our population, look after our citizens. So this is the big problem with public security and home affairs, that we do not feel that, well, there are two issues here. One, we do not feel that the provisions in the budget are adequate to meet the needs of national security at this point in time. For example, if guns are being brought into the country, if cocaine is being brought into the country, you have to protect your borders. You have to ensure that these commodities, which are not produced in Guyana, are not given access to our borders. We have 3 armed robberies a day. Where are the guns coming from? We don't make guns in Guyana. We see cocaine in lumber, cocaine in pepper sauce, cocaine in all sorts of religious objects and so on. We don't grow cocaine and coca in this country. These items are coming across our border and are harming our national economy and are harming our population. We do not feel that the Guyana Police Force and the other security services, particularly the Customs Anti-Narcotic Unit, have been given the resources, have been given the funding to enable them to protect our country from those transnational crimes. We would like to see, and this has been promised over a decade ago by a former minister, Mr. Gadrad. He promised us an air wing for the police force in 2003. Where is it? Last year we got another promise, an air wing for the police force. Where is it? It will not be bought from this budget because there's not enough money in the budget. So what we see here is a lot of repairs to the police station. Very good. But we are not seeing measures which can make our country safer, make our country more secure. When we look at the amount of murders that have taken place, the amount of armed robberies that take place, the amount of traffic accidents that take place, these are human lives. And we do not see in the budget measures which can prevent that spilling of blood. So that's the first issue. The second issue is that we do not feel that Mr. Rohi can run that ministry properly, because we have looked, if you listen to the the address by Mr. Felix yesterday, he gave a 13-year catalogue of failed measures to improve our security, starting from 2000. In fact, the measure started even before. Let us use 2000 as a neat cutoff point. From 2000, we were being given reports. We have a wall full of reports about security, but they have not been implemented by the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration or Mr. Clement Rohi. That is the problem. If we keep him there, we just perpetuate a bad situation. He's not going to bring about a change because either he doesn't have the ability or he doesn't have the interest to bring about that change. So, what will we do? We will ensure that our opinion is felt. A, that the budget allocation is inadequate and that the minister who is appointed there is inappropriate and he should be put somewhere where his talents are better suited, where he can be better employed. But obviously, he's out of his depth in the Home Affairs portfolio.
If the PPP, or I should say, sorry, the president wakes up tomorrow and decides that, okay, in the middle of the 2013 budget debates, he's going to remove Minister Rohi from there and replace him with someone else, would APNU then,
Well,
do you see yourself supporting it then?
It's a speculation, you know, it's you know, I don't like answering speculative questions. Okay. If then, so what, you know, because, you know, it can get out of hand, you know.
Okay.
But we have asked for the removal of Mr. Rohi, and we would be more inclined to support another minister in that portfolio, because we feel we've just had enough of Mr. Rohi. But to answer your question, yes, we would be happy to see the back of Mr. Rohi. But of course it would depend on who he puts, you know. For example, you know, we had a problem with Mr. Gadraj some years ago. And we objected to Mr. Gadraj's continuation in his appointment. They may actually put somebody who is, if you can imagine, you know, who is less competent than Mr. Rohi. So we'll have to look at that. But I would say, yes, we want to change. And it's unlikely that we'll get somebody who is as bad as what we have now.
Okay. Let's deal with youth for a second. Aside from security, I know David Granger and APNU's policy is always for youth development and youth empowerment. And one of the things you pointed out in the 2012 budget year was that no provisions were made for youth in terms of the setting up of a national youth policy. Now, after Minister Singh's presentation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've heard anything coming from him pertaining to the setting up of a national youth policy. What do you plan to do in the 2013 budget year to ensure we somehow, if not get a national youth policy, get as close as possible to having that set up?
Well, as you know, the opposition is not the government, and we cannot increase a single allocation of expenditure in the national budget. If, for example, $1 million is provided for the, say, New Opportunity Corps, where some of our young people are detained, we cannot put 2 million or 10 million. So we will continue to call for the promulgation of a national youth policy. We've examined the budget speech and we've seen the provisions that have been made for youth, and they are inadequate. Those provisions will not bring about a serious change in the lives and livelihood of young people. And we are going to call for changes. Our youth spokespersons will be speaking later, I think today and on Monday. And we will call for the implementation of serious measures. In fact, luckily we've started an outreach. Our Guyana Youth and Student Movement has been very active on the ground. Part of it in entertainment, but part of it in education. We had a very significant seminar at New Amsterdam. And we are quite aware of what needs to be done in order to provide jobs for young people. The government is boasting about the various schemes. Well, we would like to see those schemes enlarged. We don't want to see, you know, drips and drabs. You don't want to see 35 people or 86 people graduated. We have to start thinking in terms of 8,600 graduates. We have to start thinking in terms of looking at the number of children who write the National Grade 6 examination. That is a good clue. 17,000 children in this country write the National Grade 6 examination. So when we talk about employment, we talk about 17,000 jobs. When we talking about providing, resources for children, that is the amount of children coming into young adult life every year. So we cannot be thinking about 86 and 93 children. We have to be thinking about thousands upon thousands of children right across this country. And children will continue to get into, to leave the country or to fall into unemployment until the government takes the matter seriously. The budget doesn't provide for a serious answer to the questions of youth employment and youth empowerment. There's no serious treatment of that. They put, as I said, the trick was to, do some cut and paste jobs. Oh, it's here for youth, so they'll give, try to throw a few crumbs. That budget is not transformational. It is not, there's not enough in it for the young people of this country.
Finally, on this edition, sir, the budget debates 2013 wraps up in the new week. What can the public expect after those debates, and what will we hear from David Granger and APNU? I know you may not necessarily be able to speak for the AFC, but what can we expect?
Well, as you know, the process is in two parts. This part, if you want to call it three parts, there's a presentation, which of course lasts for several hours. But mainly, we are now in the debate part, and after this it goes to what is called the Committee of Supply, in which we go through the actual allocation line by line to come to the conclusion as to whether the money that has been allocated or proposed to be allocated is sufficient to fulfill the function which is intended. And at the end of this debate on Tuesday, we will then conclude, we will then say, well, we've looked at this budget and these are areas where we feel there should be changes. And at this moment, we are still prepared to sit down with the government of Guyana and put our recommendations for changes on the table. If that doesn't happen, well, we will have to do what we feel is in the best interest of our supporters and of the country.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Brigadier the Honorable David Granger, Opposition Leader and Leader of the People's National Congress Reform. This has been another edition of The Public Interest. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for watching.